Hello, and welcome to the Yoga Teachers Talking Yoga podcast. Today, my guest is Julian Singh, yoga practitioner, teacher, traveller, and author. Based in Canberra, he's built a corporate career in finance and IT, as well as carving out a quite unique yoga journey. He's also travelled a lot around India, Europe, the Americas, and has a very diverse curiosity for different cultures and experiences. Has a passion for Sanskrit, and that's allowed him to publish his own work, just coming out, titled Sanskrit in Modern Yoga. And we'll discuss that today. Good afternoon, Julian.
Oh, good afternoon, Paul. Wow, what an intro. Yeah, you talked me up a fair bit there. Really excited to chat about, this book and what I've been learning with Sanskrit. I'm definitely still only a student with Sanskrit, but I'm absolutely loving the journey and I'm always happy to talk about it. So yeah, thanks for inviting me to your podcast.
An absolute pleasure. You do mention in the book that you were first introduced to yoga through your mother. How about we start there? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, my mum, her name is Helen, and yeah, she actually started doing yoga back in the 80s. I think actually even earlier than that, back from her first yoga class, I think was back in Adelaide when she was a teenager. And this is when yoga in Australia wasn't very well known. She was doing a yoga teacher training with Drew Yoga and invited me along to some of the weekly classes that she was going to at that time. So yeah, she's the one that introduced me to yoga in Canberra.
Did you
Now that
practice
was a
together
long time
initially?
ago.
Yes. Did you practice together initially, or did you go to your own classes?
Well, I just went to the same classes as
Yeah.
her, and met all the other students, and yeah, just opened up. I was always been fascinated with the philosophy of yoga, especially, and even in those very first classes, some of the Sanskrit terms that were being used, different postures or concepts like yamas and niyamas.
Hmm.
And just there's just a real fascination with that language. And, I don't speak Hindi, I don't speak Indian languages naturally. And so, yeah, that fascination's always been there. And, fortunately, I've had time over the last few years to really delve into that space a bit. But
Hmm.
right from the start, yeah, that was my first um, interaction with Sanskrit really in those very early yoga classes in I think it was 2002.
Did you find that fascination because the teachers used terms, Sanskrit terms, or?
Yeah, yeah, I did. I was just like, what does this word mean? I've never heard of it. It sounded
Hmm.
so different to anything I'd heard. And, at that point in time, I was going through a bit of a philosophy stage. I was reading all the old Western philosophers, the old Greek philosophers, and I just had an interest in that space. And then to hear these terms, it was like, it seemed like it was a whole world that was rich and that I didn't really know much about. So there was
Hmm.
definitely a curiosity there. But yeah, it was just, words like pranayama or, asana, niyamas and niyamas I found really interesting. I was exposed to them quite early on. And, I've always been interested in the parallels between the yamas and the niyamas and, ethics from Western traditions.
Hmm.
There's a lot of overlap actually.
Yeah,
There's a lot of common ground there. But
yeah, totally.
yeah, those are the main words that were used early on. Yeah. The way the book came about was initially, for the first sort of year, 15 months study, I didn't really think about writing a book. Uh, but I was just compiling all my own notes. And uh, as soon as I decided to write a book, it basically forced me to start being a lot more, have a lot more references, going back to what we call authoritative sources, not, going way beyond, Google or AI chats, and going back to these old texts to find the links. But yeah, all the information around pronunciation, that I'll say is something that uh, I still need a lot more practice with.
Hmm.
And but it's just like with anything, right? More practice, more you practice it, the better you'll get at it.
Absolutely. And just that all that time being interested, but making notes and observations and taking, as you say, as you said in the book as well, a word a day or a something a day, just just walking along with this as a as an interest. Was the book a goal, or did the book become something that, oh, now that I've got all this material, I should put that together?
Good question. I think it. I think after a period of time, I just found when I was having conversations with others, and they were, people that aren't Sanskritists, and even people that aren't into yoga, and I was trying to describe to them what I'm working on. Um, I actually found it, their reactions really They were really interested, and they were thinking, they might have been partly thinking, "What's this? What's happened? What's, uh, you know, maybe a bit of concern that I've gone off the rails, or just joking around." Like, one of my friends said, "Insane. Studying Sanskrit is insane," or
Mm.
he calls it insane script. I'm
Yeah,
joking.
that's a good one.
Um, but to answer that question, yeah, it just evolved naturally, really.
Mhm.
And I have published a book before. I published a book in 2017, and the way that book was an open government open data, and that's not the focus of this podcast. But basically, the way that book came about was I was just doing tons and tons of research, and my professional career, went in that direct trajectory towards open data. And I had such well organized notes. They were categorized. I had summaries of all these research papers I'd read. I had it all laid out. And then the idea to convert it into a book came about. And I foolishly thought it would only be a few months, but it was still another 7 months of work to actually get that to happen,
Mhm.
of very intense work. And I think the same thing happened here, really. I've just been collecting a lot of notes. Um, I found when I was talking to others, they were really interested. And I thought, yeah, this is actually pretty interesting. If it's like a different field that a lot of people that don't do yoga wouldn't really know much about at all. And the idea of putting into a book, there's this, one of my yoga teachers has told me, and I really believe it, the best way to master something is to teach it. And that applies to different aspects of life. And, in a way, writing a book is a way of sharing it with others. You're not directly teaching it, but you're sharing it. And so, uh, to get to that point, to be able to, proudly hold a book in your hand that you've written, you need to go through a lot of work, a lot of extra work to reach that point. There's a lot of little extra little bits and pieces I had to go and research and chase down and double check, triple check, that I wouldn't have done otherwise. So really, it was a bit of both. I had the idea of the books sort of evolved naturally from having the notes, but then also in preparing the book, I went a whole level deeper in, validating and expanding on my notes.
Mhm.
And the hardest thing actually with this book, one of the most challenging things was working out the boundaries of what not to include.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
the current book that's there, I probably went through three or four completely fairly different concepts of what I wanted the end book to look like. At one stage, I was just going to do words and have like a big vocab of words and explore the individual words and try and unpack them. And then at a different stage, I was really focused on some yoga sutras. But I realize now that I need a few more years work in that space before I could write about it. So yeah, it's sort of the idea. It evolved over time, and to get where it is, yeah, to where it is now.
Other activities you've been involved in, we might get to those in a little while.
Yeah.
There's marathons and ultra marathons and riding bikes long distances, you don't just hop on a bike and decide today I'm going to ride to Sydney. You
Yeah.
you first need to generate the skill set and generate the know what you're capable of and know what your shortcomings are.
Yeah, look, I think the thing that's definitely common with the endurance sports and writing a book is, I really love having a goal. And when I've got a goal,
Hmm.
I can really focus. I'm one of those people that can just really focus on it. And what do you need to get there? What are all the stages that you need to build up to it? And then just chip away at it, knowing that you've got that goal. And on the try all the endurance sports, I'm definitely not athletic. I'm not naturally athletic at all. But the thing I love about them is it's just hard. If you put in the work, you'll improve. Same with like running and riding. If you put in the work, you'll improve. And I've actually convinced a few people that that weren't runners at all. They weren't able to run 1 kilometer.
Hmm.
And I said to them, there's a few people actually. I've said, look, you could run a half marathon. You never know. Don't put limits on yourself. And they laugh it off. But then 12 months later, they're doing a half marathon. And I go, remember the conversation we had? And it's amazing what we can do when anyone can do when they focus on something and they have a bit of a goal in mind. And so me with the book, once I started telling with this book and also with previous book, as soon as I started telling people about it, I've sort of put it out there and then I'm sort of almost holding myself accountable that I have to go and finish it. And it's the same with the endurance events. I tell people, I sign up and then tell people, and then I'm kind of locked in
Hmm.
and then focused. And yeah, I think we just different people have different traits
Hmm.
and things that they like. And I love having a goal. I really love it. And there's parts of, people that practice yoga. I guess I don't want to go into too much into my own yoga philosophy, but there's different elements of yoga that you can focus on. And for me, I joke around that the book was almost a form of tapas, like extreme, like intense exercise for
Hmm.
me.
Yeah.
Um, and same with the endurance sports. I think there's a lot of overlap between some elements of yoga and endurance sports. But I'm not that, this is probably might be a little bit off topic, but that's an area that I'm really fascinated in, and I'd love to explore more topic.
We might be getting you back another day to go through all
Yeah,
Julian,
maybe. Yeah.
but
Yep.
just so you know, I could spend 2 hours talking about this stuff. I love it. And
Yeah.
I just,
Same.
I think it's just so cool that someone's taken the time to really distill the concepts of yoga and also go into the law the way you've done
Mm.
it. And I think it's really good. And so, well, congratulations on that front. People often will start out with the best of intentions, but get a certain distance and it just beats them.
Yep.
So finding something within yourself that continues that on.
The hardest thing for me certainly was, and my probably my weakness is just with proofing. That is really painful for me, and I really struggled with that. And that's where I'm really grateful to have such a really strong support network that helped me get through that phase. And I guess once you're at that proofing stage, you've already done all the work, and you can't really just turn away and say it's too hard.
Hmm.
So it's just really you've sort of got that critical mass of the work done. But the exploring part, I tell you, that's not hard at all. I love that. It's
Yeah.
so exciting and fun. And there's such a rich history of yoga, and there's all these, that you've got that visualization of, a tree branching out, and you've got all the limbs that have other like smaller branches. That's so much what it's like when you're exploring whole realm like yoga and all the literature and all the philosophy of yoga over the last, few thousand years. And, the beautiful thing about Sanskrit is that it hasn't changed. The language hasn't changed for a very long time since there's a guy called Panini, and he standardized a lot of the rules around Sanskrit. And since he standardized those rules, almost all of this Sanskrit texts since have followed those rules. So people now can pick up something that was written 1500 years ago and it's written with the same rules that are still being used today. So
Mm.
I don't think there's any other languages in the world where that's the case. I could be wrong on that,
Mm.
but having that stability in how this rich history of philosophy and self-inquiry has been recorded is, for me, one of the really exciting things about Sanskrit. And so, yeah, going back, the exploring stage was just so, so fun. And you think, oh, what about that? I want to explore that. And you know what it's like. You read a book and then
Mhm.
you find three other books that you want to buy and read. And then you buy one of those and then it just keeps going. So the hard thing was just cutting it back and not going down rabbit holes and just trying to, for me, I was always trying to keep it practical. The boundaries were what could be practical to a teacher that's teaching today in the world,
Mhm.
teaching yoga today in the world, and using that as the basic sort of parameter. That's what I would cut a lot of stuff out and prevent myself going down rabbit holes.
You did a Drew yoga teaching course?
Yeah, I did that. I finished that in 2015,
Yep.
and yeah, I've been teaching sort of on and off. I sort of do sessions at special events
Hmm.
rather than like weekly events, like weekly routine classes.
Right.
So which has its pros and cons. But yeah, I've been teaching yoga to others. It's fair to say for 10 years.
Yeah.
Uh, I'd say irregular, or non-constant fashion, you could say. But
Was the Drew yoga, I've met them twice at the yoga days.
yeah.
Was their course, did they weave in philosophy and some of the
Yeah.
sutras
Yeah,
as well?
yeah, the course. Yeah, so I remember um, they did in the first module. The version of it that I did was 8 modules, and at the end of the first module, there was just a short section, but it was actually quite impressive. I went back and read it again just a few months ago, and yeah, they talk about the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the yamas and the niyamas. um, and sort of give a bit of a window into that world and really show some of the key things that you need to know as a yoga teacher. So for me, that was yeah, really, really fascinating. I thought, oh, I've got to go and read more of this.
Hmm.
That's what I thought back then in 2000 well, it was before 2015, but yeah, I finished that course in 2015, and yeah, it was. I've definitely started on that journey now of exploring it further.
Did you travel for the course, or was that something you could do out of Canberra?
So it's changed a little bit now with the current courses. Just I think COVID changed a lot of things, but the courses when I started, um, they had sort of they were 6 day kind of mini retreats, and you'd go. So I used to go up to Kincumber, up
Okay.
north of Newcastle, and it was really good because you'd really have that time to really indulge in their space and really go quite deep. Now I think the courses are they've got a bit of a blended model where it's, in person and online, which makes a lot of sense with the technology, improvements
Mm,
that have come out of COVID, I guess, or been um, expedited through COVID.
it certainly has. Are you someone who's done any guiding or teaching of just prana and breath work and meditation?
I've actually done a few classes to the triathlon community and trail running communities. And I always bring in pranayama and uh, about just calming down, stilling the mind, and connecting with the body. Um, I've, you know, probably not qualified to teach meditation, but for me, just calming down, stilling, becoming aware of the body,
Mhm.
focusing on the sounds, bringing the focus, starting externally, then bringing that in, and then just sort of having some silence. For me, that's really quite potent for people, especially that are, running full steam most of the time.
Hmm.
Just having some quiet moments to slow down. I just have a handful of practices that I teach, and I don't go beyond that. For me, it's just keep it simple is the real key thing. A lot of these endurance athletes, they want to do better, and having an exercise to connect with the breathing can only be a good thing, right? So, of course, there's a few people that, if they just want to be out, doing hardcore, they're used to just being on 100% all the time. They may not have the patience for it. But when I do the classes, people that are interested turn up, right? And the people that are not interested aren't even going to turn up. So I've never really had a problem with that. And I've always had quite positive feedback on the classes that I've done. So yeah, I think for me, it's just, I call it, we're just going to do, I just say we're just going to do some breathing exercises. I don't call it pranayama to the
Yeah.
non-yoga people. Yeah.
You talk their language.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. As you just said, you probably don't need huge amounts of time. None of the pranayama practices I practice anyway go over 10 minutes.
Hmm.
Because I have a little routine I do every morning, and that's what I try and teach to others, and that usually only takes about 5 minutes
Hmm.
or less. So yeah, for me, it's just about keeping it simple. To be honest, I think I could do a lot more work in that space, teaching in that space. I think there's a lot more interest there than, um, there's always been very strong interest there, but I've just done limited classes, but because it's an area that not is not really associated with yoga that much, triathletes, triathlons or endurance events, but I think there is an overlap there, but I might be the odd one out looking for that, but that's what I believe anyway.
Couple of things still to touch on.
Yeah.
Trying to work out which one to go with first, and maybe it's an opportunity just to find out where things are at now, what's happening, what's next for you.
Yep. Yep.
It's got
Absolutely.
a follow-up book.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. Yeah, there's a lot of actually right now is a really good time to chat. There's a lot happening for that I'm involved with in the Sanskrit space. So the book that I've been talking about, it's been iterated right in the thick of that process right now. And the next version, it's called the first edition. The big difference between the previous edition and this next edition is it's really focused on yoga teachers and yoga teacher trainers. So it's not focused as much on, Sanskritists. It's really targeting yoga teachers. So it's going to be a lot more practical. So the first section has a lot more just the questions that I've been asked by yoga teachers when I told them I'm into Sanskrit, the questions that they ask me. That's basically what's informed the first section. So a lot more focus on just how to get started with Devanagari. Just where do you even start? Because it's so intimidating if you haven't used that script before.
Yeah,
That's a script that a lot of the yoga texts have been that have that are in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is the spoken language,
absolutely.
and Devanagari is the script that's most heavily recorded yoga scriptures or texts. There are other scripts out there, but Devanagari is the main one for yoga. I'm definitely the book is not how to do Sanskrit, how to translate. It's not that.
Mm.
It's not a textbook. But what it is it's basically a reference guide for yoga teachers to be able to go deeper with really strong, solid information to be able to go a little bit deeper into just their own familiarity and comfort with Devanagari and Sanskrit and the key Sanskrit texts that relate to yoga. So it's kind of like if someone was going to do, um, if someone was interested in who is a yoga teacher and they're interested in studying Sanskrit, this could be like a nice little primer. But it's not a Sanskrit textbook. It's not how to translate Sanskrit because that's beyond my capabilities to be able to write with confidence on that. So yeah, the new book is out. I'm really, really excited about
Well
it.
done.
I've had some
Yeah.
good feedback on the previous version. It's going to be much sharper, much more focused. Yeah, I've got a couple other projects I'm thinking about tackling, but I'm going to give it a couple of months first after this book is finished. Um, another idea I've got is around some of the vocab, the key
Hmm.
Sanskrit terms, creating like a couple of decks of cards to help people like study cards,
Yep.
but really with useful information on them, more than just a study card, sort of a bit of a reference. Because that's actually, for me, that's the part I really enjoy. I enjoy waking up, doing the morning routine, and then I've got some study cards and I'll just test myself out, or refresh what different things mean. And it's such an easy way to do it. You can just spend 5 minutes on it. And if you do that every day, you can build up a vocabulary. So
I have to ask one more thing because I ask everybody this question. So, from your own experience and your own journey so far, who might be an inspiration?
it could be, anyone from like, Martin Luther King to, bringing about sort of social change through non-violence.
Yep.
Would be through someone like Vivekananda, who
Yep.
was a sort of a bridge between ancient sources of knowledge, I guess, or ancient reservoirs of knowledge. My mum,
Yep.
the yoga teachers that I've been blessed to have some really special, heart-based, caring yoga teachers that are really sincere and authentic in their practices. Yeah, there's many people that I'm inspired by. There's a lot of good happening around the world, and yeah, there's a lot of figures that we can look up to, I think,
Absolutely.
for the things that they do. Yeah.
Yoga Teachers Talking Yoga is a podcast about just that, talking yoga, but it's also about stories and it's also about how we all connect through yoga and the sorts of concepts and ideas that we can share together. And I look very much forward to staying in touch and seeing how it all pans out for you the next year or three and on your own yoga journey as well.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, and same likewise. Likewise, I look forward to seeing how things pan out with you and all the projects that you've got going too. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Julian Singh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us today on our Yoga Teachers Talking Yoga podcast.
No worries at all, Paul. It's been a great chat. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you again. Julian's interest in pranayama and breath work stems much from his childhood asthma. And before we leave you today, we'd like to let him share how yoga helped overcome those earlier issues and anxieties.
For me personally, when I was younger, I used to have quite bad asthma, and I was, needing to work through after that, how to get on top of the asthma, and the breathing was, well, we just call it breathing, right? It's breathing is um, the aspects of controlled breathing, being aware of the stages of inhalation, holding, exhalation, holding, just connecting with the breath and your body. Is such a powerful thing. It really is. And, so when in my teens, actually, before I even had any interaction with yoga, there was a guy called, the Russian guy, I think, called Buteyko. You
Mhm.
probably know the Buteyko method. Through that, you do become more aware of your breath. In my view, really do much yoga without connecting with the breath.
We hope you enjoyed hearing about Julian's unique yoga journey. This episode brings an end to our first series of Yoga Teachers Talking Yoga. We hope you found these chats interesting, insightful, and inspiring in helping you with your own yoga journey. Feel free to send us your thoughts and comments on the series using our email link in the descriptions. And of course, if you're a yoga teacher who'd like to be interviewed, please let us know. You can also find us on our Yoga Teachers Talking Yoga Facebook page, where you'll find additional material, introductions to our guests, and can also leave comments. For now, though, we thank you for listening and look forward to bringing you more stories from new guests in the near future.